back with another video looking at some colouring pencils, and this time I'm looking at Derwent Chromaflow pencils. I'm going to give you my full thoughts on them and give you a little bit of detail about these colouring pencils all whilst I sit and draw in my sketchbook. So I'm going to be testing out the Chromaflow colouring pencils, and I am going to swatch them all first. The colours that I have got in my set, I went for the white because I wanted to see how well it would blend and lay on top of the colouring pencils, because I think that's really important. I've gone for a Tropical Rain, which is a really nice jewel green, so I really wanted to try that out. I've also gone for a Turquoise Green and a Green Meadow. And then for the blue sort of tones, I've gone for the Periwinkle, the Lapis Blue, and then I've also got the Slate Grey. I wasn't able to get a black in this set, so I went for the Slate Grey instead, which has got a very blue tone to it. I've also gone for a Ultra Pink, the Scarlet, Sunflower, Burnt Sienna and Natural Brown. I picked up all of my colouring pencils from Jackson's and I purchased them open stock. I'm a big fan of buying pencils open stock because I can repurchase ones that are running low and I have a bit more control over the colouring pencils that I am purchasing. So you are able to buy these colouring pencils open stock and build up your own collection, and there are 72 colours in total that you can choose from. You can also purchase these ones in sets and they come in a really nice metal tin, true to form for Derwent, so you are able to still purchase them in sets of up to 72. The Chromaflow colouring pencils themselves are a fairly entry-level colouring pencil. I think they're going to be absolutely fantastic for the student or perhaps the hobbyist artist, because they offer a really high quality product but for quite a low price. So I think this is going to be a really interesting product for anybody that has some experience with colouring pencils and they're looking to expand their collection of colouring pencils or their art mediums, and they want to perhaps venture out into slightly more expensive colouring pencils, but they might not necessarily be looking for artist quality or the prices that come with the artist quality pencils. Currently these colouring pencils are retailing on Jackson's for £1.50 per pencil open stock, and like I said earlier, you can purchase these in sets as well, and they vary in cost depending on the size set that you are purchasing. It's worth looking out on Jackson's because they do often have different brands on sale, and recently I saw that they had Derwent colouring pencils on sale, so it's worth checking back every now and again to see what colouring pencils they are actually offering and if you can save yourself some money on them. So I will link the colouring pencils in the description box for anybody that is interested in purchasing themselves or maybe as a gift to somebody else, and then you can easily access that. Anybody curious on what sketchbook I'm using my Stillman and Burn sketchbook, and it's part of their beta series. I really enjoy this sketchbook, and if you saw my last video, I'm actually coming towards the end of this sketchbook, so I am looking for some ideas on what to create to complete those pages, and maybe some recommendations as well for some other sketchbooks. So if you would like to recommend anything, pop them down in the comments below for me. Much like a lot of the other colouring pencils I've been talking about recently, these Chromaflow pencils are also wax based, so they could be a really good alternative to the Prismacolor pencils or also the Coloursoft ones that I tested out in my last video. For the price point of these colouring pencils, I thought that they blended absolutely beautifully. The colours laid down very softly, but it also created a really nice layer of colour, and I felt as though I didn't have to apply too much pressure to the colouring pencil in order to get payoff on my paper. The colours built up quite quickly and there was a really nice smooth finish to the colouring pencils. And I actually think I preferred the Chromaflow pencils over the Derwent Colour Soft pencils that I tested out in my previous video. I felt as though the Chromaflow pencils had much more of that sort of soft feel to them, and I thought they were a little bit more like the Prismacolors than the Colour Soft ones were. So for me, I think that was a really big win on these colouring pencils. An excellent way for you guys to perhaps purchase a set of colouring pencils that's not going to cost you as much as the Prismacolors, and hopefully you'll be able to save a little bit of money in your pockets. When it comes to light fastness for these colouring pencils, much like the Prismacolor and probably the Colour Soft, they vary from pencil to pencil on how light fast they actually are. So that's one of the reasons why I would suggest these as a hobbyist colouring pencil or a student grade colouring pencil, because there could be a bit of colour shift towards some of the more dual tone colouring pencils such as the pinks, the blues, the greens, than the earthy tones. Those ones generally have a better light fastness than those dual tone colouring pencils. Looking at the Derwent website, Derwent rate the light fastness of these colouring pencils with the blue wool test, and they've given this set of colouring pencils a 60% light fast rating across all 72 colouring pencils. So if we break that down further, 39 of these colouring pencils are rated between good and excellent, and then that leaves the last 39 colouring pencils to be below that level. It really does depend pencil to pencil on the light fastness. However, if that's something that you're not worried about, then you don't need to concern yourself with light fastness. If you are wanting to have a longer lasting piece of artwork that doesn't shift with UV light, you could always look into getting a UV fixative and applying that over your drawing to try and combat some colour shift. However, you might not really need to worry about that. When it came to the performance of the colouring pencils, whilst I was swatching them, it was evident from the very beginning that they were going to be a very easy, malleable colouring pencil to use. There was one colouring pencil in the set that felt slightly different to the rest, and that was the Periwinkle. When I was swatching that one, it felt to me that it wasn't giving a very strong colour, whereas all of the other ones, whilst I was swatching them, they seemed to have a really deep, rich colour to them. However, the Periwinkle just seemed to be very surface level and it didn't seem to have a very rich tone to it. But all of the other colours that I've picked out, I've been generally really happy with, and they've worked really well in my drawing. Whilst I was drawing the cacti, I found that the colours blended easily and they laid down on the paper incredibly quickly. I did adjust my drawing ever so slightly because I'd already laid in all of the spikes on the cacti, and then I had to colour over the top of them, and I feel like the blends that I've created with the ridges on the cacti worked well together. I really enjoyed using the slate grey in there to get some of those more sort of blue tones into those shadows, and I just generally felt that they were a lovely colouring pencil to use. I enjoyed how well they all blended together, which leads me on to the point of those Colour Soft colouring pencils. Whilst I also really enjoyed using those, I felt like the Chromaflow colouring pencils just blended that much easier and gave such a rich colour payoff, whereas the Colour Soft ones, I felt they blended incredibly well. I feel like the colours are better with the Chromaflow, and I guess because the Chromaflow are a newer pencil range, they have developed these with that in mind, but they are a slightly cheaper price point than the Coloursoft colouring pencils. So if you're trying to decide which of the Derwent colouring pencils to purchase and you're wondering what the difference between the Coloursoft and the Chromaflow are, I personally found that the Chromaflow colouring pencils blended a lot easier, and I thought that the colours were a lot more vibrant, and I felt like the blend between colours was that much nicer with the Chromaflow colouring pencils than the Coloursoft. It didn't take me very long to build up the colours within my drawing, and I just had so much fun whilst I was actually creating this piece. I felt like the colouring pencils worked really well, and I just absolutely loved the colours. I'm so pleased with how these actually performed, and I think I will go ahead and purchase additional colouring pencils within this range because they did work really nicely. When we're talking about the pros, I would say these colouring pencils are definitely up there for an entry-level colouring pencil. They're absolutely fantastic for a student or hobbyist artist, and I think that they offer absolutely fantastic value for the formula of this colouring pencil. They are definitely a good contender against the Prismacolor because they do blend absolutely beautifully, and the colours are very rich and very, very vibrant. The barrel of the Chromaflow colouring pencil is smaller than the Coloursoft, so it is a much smaller colouring pencil, and therefore you do get a smaller core in that barrel. In terms of its comfort, I think that it's potentially not as comfortable to use as some other colouring pencils. I do prefer a slightly wider or chunkier barrel to my colouring pencil, and I do find that the slightly narrower ones like these Chromaflows can indent in my fingers, and they can get a bit uncomfortable whilst I'm working because I can press down onto my pencil with quite a lot of pressure, and I find that I do then indent into my fingers and they can feel a little bit numb after a little while, whereas I don't often get that as much with a wider barrel on my colouring pencils. So that's one thing to keep in mind, is the grip of the colouring pencils. And because of that barrel size, it does then give it a slightly cheaper feel, just because some of the more expensive colouring pencils I have, they do have that slightly wider barrel, which makes them feel a lot more high end and much more like an artist quality colouring pencil. All in all, I have enjoyed using these colouring pencils, and I definitely feel like there'll be one that I will use in my sketchbook time and time again. I'm really happy with my drawing that I've created in today's video. If you have enjoyed today's video, please do give it a big thumbs up, and also make sure you subscribe so you never miss out on any of my future videos. Don't forget to give me some sketchbook ideas on how to fill in those last few pages in my sketchbook. I will see you next week. Thanks for watching. Bye guys.